Hello everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Holland Land Office Museum's Artifact video series. My name is Ryan Duffy, and I'm the director of the museum. And this week we're going to talk about the men behind the money of the Holland Land Company, and those that really put forth the investment that led to the creation of the land company, and eventually the Holland Purchase and the Holland Land Office. Now these gentlemen were all Dutch bankers from Holland. They were all members of 6 various banking families that were very wealthy and powerful within the Amsterdam banking scene in the Netherlands, and pulled their money together to pursue a different interest than what they had before, and that was land speculation in the newly minted United States, where there was large quantities of open land that were available for sale that could then be flipped to sell to settlers and other investors and make a pretty considerable profit. Now these gentlemen were the ones that hired Theophiles Cazenove and eventually Paul Auguste and Joseph Ellicott in order to carry out this plan. Now this group got together in the 1790s, and the men initially included in this group, though there were others that eventually joined in throughout the history of the land company. Now, the 6 founding members of the Holland Land Company were Willem Willink, Nicholas van Staphorst, Rutger van Schimel, Peter van Egen, Peter Stasinski, and Henrik Vollenhoven. But they were the ones who put the initial monies together in order to first pursue lands within the United States, first in western Pennsylvania and then also in our area in western New York. And they're the ones who worked with Cazenove after approaching Robert Morris in order to work out a deal to eventually purchase the 3.25 million acres that were available here in western New York. Now these gentlemen all had interesting backgrounds and were part of the banking scene prior to this, and were actually parts of the funding for the American Revolution and the early United States, as a lot of the money that came into the United States initially came from European powers, including the Netherlands. We're going to give a little bit of a bio behind the men behind the money, so that it gives us a little bit better understanding of sort of the silent partners in all of this, the ones who never come to the United States, even though their financial backing is pivotal for any of this to happen, and why Batavia really comes to be. The first representative of the Holland Land Company that we'll discuss was Rutger van Schimel, who was born in 1761 and died in 1825. He joined other members that would form the company in 1789 in their investment in what would be known as the Holland Land Company. However, his role soon expanded when he was sought out for his legal acumen and was appointed the legal advisor for all the banking houses. And it wasn't just in this area that he was heavily involved. He was also a major player in the political theater of Holland, which was actually under French control at the time. And he was put into several high-ranking positions, including ambassador to Paris, and was even made a French noble and count by Napoleon Bonaparte himself. And he would actually remain in these positions as France controlled the Batavia Republic into the early 19th century. And if you look at a very early map of Buffalo, you'll find that today's Niagara Street was actually named after him. The next 2 representatives that we will discuss are Peter van Egen and Nicholas van Staphorst. Van Egen was born in 1753 and died in 1818, and was the head of one of the largest Dutch trading businesses at the height of their flourishing trade empire. And his ships traded goods all around the world, from Russia to Sweden to Spain, and even all the way to the United States. However, the events in Europe during the French domination of the Netherlands forced them to look to income from another source, as trading was more restricted. And it was then in the mid-1790s that he joined as an investor in the Holland Land Company and was actually voted to be its first director. Now, van Staphorst was born in 1742 and actually died in 1801, and was heavily involved in the funding in the early United States, working with many of the other banking houses, loaning huge sums of money to the fledgling government. He was one of the last holdouts within the company opposed to the purchasing of land, but eventually relented in 1792. In his home country, van Staphorst was one of the writers of the Constitution of the Batavian Republic, but was forced to leave Holland altogether, and Buffalo's South Main Street bore his name. Now, two of the more minor partners within the Holland Land Company were Peter Stasinski and Henrik Vollenhoven. Now, Stasinski was born in 1735 and died in 1795, and he was the chief of one of the most profitable banking businesses in Amsterdam in the 1780s. And it was he that actually took the lead in the investments in land speculation in the United States, and was probably the most ambitious, at least initially, in the venture, and was the largest shareholder. Now, Vollenhoven was born sometime before 1736, and we don't know exactly when he died, but he was actually born in the Dutch South African colony and joined the company after an initial purchase with his son. And actually, Buffalo's Erie Street was originally named after him. The last and probably most prominent of the investors was Willem Willink, who was born in 1750 and died in 1841. And he's probably the most prominent for the simple fact that he lived the longest, so his name appears on more deeds than any other of the investors. He was the most active in the land purchasing and speculation out of all the members of the Holland Land Company. And in August 1792, he actually purchased 200,000 acres in the southeast corner of the purchase, and then a few months later purchased 100,000 more acres in a narrow strip in the center. So his first purchase was in modern-day Allegheny County, and his second purchase almost mirrors down through Niagara and Erie County, going down towards PA. And Willink's name actually is represented in an area of Erie County. It was actually called Willink. A town was named after him. And it would encompass today Concord, Eden, and Aurora, Boston area. And his name also shows up in the early Buffalo streets, as North Main Street today was actually known as Willink Avenue. And as you can see by the signature here, his one son, Jan, was actually also involved in the Holland Land Company. Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Holland Land Office Museum's Artifact video series. If you've missed any in the past, you can go to our YouTube channel, Holland Land Office Museum, and check them out. They're all in the playlist. And make sure to follow along, because there's almost 60 videos now in there, so there's plenty to choose from. But as always, if you want to know more about the artifacts or want to see them for yourselves, come by the museum. We'll be happy to share more stories about them with you and show them off in person.